Look, I get it, okay? This is not a visual medium. It's just a bunch of nerdy-ass voice actors sitting around the table describing terrible, terrible, terrible things in vivid, vivid detail. Describing things that we're never going to be able to unsee or unhear or unimagine. This is your spoiler warning for episode 15 of Critical Role. Let's get started with our animated recap. The previous episode ended with the party saying goodbye to Dorian. Goodbye, Dorian. Adios. Gone but not forgotten. Bird on a wire, rat in a pocket. Goodbye. Buddy, what are you doing? So this episode picks up with the party sitting around Lord Estros's breakfast table, talking about what to do next. Fern asks, hey, what are we supposed to do with this ring that we stole from Armand Treshy? Because we had this mission to replace the ring he's wearing on his finger with a decoy ring, but then we've got the one that we took off his finger. What are we going to do with this? Now, Lord Estros pulls out this magical kind of spyglass monocle thing, and he investigates this ring and determines, hey, it's not magical. So that means that he could melt it down. But instead, the party has the idea to feed it to fresh cut grass, who, I will remind you, can eat metal for some reason. The party powwow with Lord Estros about some of the information they've gathered and what their options are coming up, because they impart the information of, hey, we met this lady named Lady Shashadre, and she might be a good candidate for someone that's sitting on that mysterious council of oligarchs called the Quorum. They also impart the information that Lady Emoth transformed into a Duggar-like goo person who escaped. And Lord Estros has some thoughts about this. Lordna makes a point to even ask Lord Estros about, hey, what happened to that vial that we gave you of like shade creeper juice that you were going to have alchemically investigated to determine what it is? And what we learned about from that vial is not much. It's like a lubricant to help them be slimy as they travel in the difficult, hard tunnels. It wasn't very helpful. In their discussion, the party are weighing up two options. The first option is to pursue Lady Emoth. She's clearly a Duggar-like goo creature. She's got ties to Armand Treshy. She knows information about the party because they fought each other, you know. Maybe she could be a liability. And she's down there in the guts of the spires someplace, in the sewers, in the canals, beneath this whole metropolis. So they could go down there and try and pursue her. The second option is that they could go to Lady Hexam and take a job that she was offering to Ashton. That job was to perform a heist kind of adventure out in the Heartmoor. And for some reason, they decide to go do that. But as they're heading to the Hexam Manor to take on this job, they have a Pokemon-like random encounter. It's the Green Seekers. It's those two green-cloaked investigators from the ball earlier. So it's Gus, the half-orc, or maybe full-blooded orc, and then it's Ollie, the gnome or halfling. I should really know what species these people are. It's not an immediately hostile encounter, though. They just want to talk. They're investigators investigating things that need to be investigated. They cast a special spell that creates like a cone of silence around them, kind of like in Get Smart, so that people outside the cone can't hear the conversation and they can't hear things outside the cone. It's the spell equivalent of just like a soundproof wall. These two Green Seekers, Gus and Ollie, say to the party, we're interested in your business. We've been keeping an eye on the happenings around Drusar. In fact, we've been hired to work out what's going on around here, because there's been some incursions in town, some events that left particular structures in rubble. Of course, they are referring to the Moon Tower, which the party did play a part in accidentally destroying. The party admits that they were at the Moon Tower, but they don't really cop up to being at all responsible for exploding it, which, you know, I guess they kind of weren't responsible. It was mainly Ira, the Nightmare King, that set off that device that exploded the tower. However, the party doesn't mention the identity of the Nightmare King or Ira. Instead, the conversation gets a bit sidetracked. The Green Seekers say that they found the secret chamber below there with all the strange equipment, but wardens, the cops in the area, prevented further investigation, which hints at some kind of government cover-up. When these two investigators ask the party about what their goals are, the party says they're around to investigate the whole jelly people and shade creepers situation, and to avenge the death of one of their friends. Buddy, please don't knock anything off the table. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lordna says, we're here to raise hell in the name of Bell. Bell's hells. I don't know, the name's not sticking for me. It's not sticking for me yet. At this point, the two groups realize they have a little bit in common in this one aspect, because they're both interested in this shade creeper problem. So they agree to work together in a fashion on this one particular job. And if that investigation turns up a bigger fish, someone that's more suspicious than Bell's Hells, this new group, then maybe that would alleviate some of the pressure that these two investigators feel to investigate these adventurers. And get a load of these lucky ducks. The Green Seekers happen to have a contact in the mines beneath the towers that the party could go through to access some of these deeper, darker, danker areas of Drusar. One of the Green Seekers says, we don't need to go that far down, we just need to go far enough to recover some evidence. Because if we can prove the strange physiology of this Lady Emoth and how she's been transformed from a noble of Drusar to this creepy thing, that could be enough to prove some wrongdoing and some greater conspiracy here. So the party catches a gondola to the Underrush mining facility in the Smolder Spire. This is an industrial area, there's a bunch of workers around, and they go to meet this fella that Gus happens to know. By the way, I've got a trade proposition for you. I'll show you my cat, and you'll share this video with a friend of yours. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, 1, there he is. When we come back from the break, we get to enjoy one of the most awkward scenes I've ever seen roleplayed. It's a scene between Matt, playing Gus, and Matt, playing Ogdus, two NPCs having a lover's tiff. Now, Ogdus is this mine official. This is their contact at the mines. They go down there and they're talking, and it's immediately kind of hostile. Ogdus demands an apology and wants his furniture back, and at one point Matt describes this Gus character clenching his fist, and I couldn't help but imagine that Arthur meme. Fresh Cut Grass acts as kind of a therapist in this scene. I don't know, it was very awkward to watch. But in the end, we learn a couple of things. Ogdus says, look, the mine's been closed down there. The deepest part of the mine has been closed for a while, but I could take you to the foreman and you can talk to the foreman about it. So Ogdus takes the party to the foreman named Shotan Brew. Now, Shotan Brew is this massive neckbeard. He's fat, sweaty, I think it's implied that he stinks a little bit, and he's writing a novel called New World Searchers. Matt goes out of his way to describe how poorly written and bland and generic this novel is, which is pretty mean. Laudna rolls to intimidate this dwarf and says, tell us everything you know and we'll be your friends. She rolls a natural 20 on the intimidation check, and this fella is so frightened by her terrifying persona, her terrifying visage, that he pulls a Ted from Breaking Bad, tries to back away, falls over, and hits his head and is knocked unconscious. The party choose to rob him for some reason. They take a bunch of money out of his pockets and then they turn the room upside down, looking through his things. Now, this scene is really weird. I just want to step outside the review, outside the recap for a little bit, and say that I'm not particularly comfortable around torture scenes, and that's what this ends up being. One of the Green Seekers tries to like break his fingers and all this kind of stuff, and I actually took my headphones off. I was like, I'm just gonna walk away for 10 minutes. I don't want to watch a violent interrogation scene. I don't know. I figure since they're pre-recording this kind of stuff, I don't think it would be too much to ask for just like a little content warning for really extreme scenes like that. But here's what my Discord, which is matthewperkins.net/Discord, here's what they had to say happened. So here's their bit of the recap. So this character, this dwarf, was receiving packages from Armand Treshy to keep the mine closed. And he was receiving the packages on a pretty regular basis. So he's clearly a bad guy. He's in cahoots with the enemy. They learned this information because they threatened him, they performed some violence on him, and Fresh Cut Grass cast Detect Thoughts and read his mind. Now, they're a little bit worried here that this foreman could run and get the authorities or help of the bad guys, so Gus, the half-orc, casts a spell which charms him in some way and says, hey, just keep an eye out for anybody coming our way and yell out if you see him. And then the party descends down into the mines via some kind of trolley system. When we get down into the mines, it doesn't take long for Chetney to smell with that big old sniffer of his some musty business, some shade creeper creepiness. And then we get right into combat against the most shade creepers we've ever fought at once. And this can be a little bit of a deadly predicament because we recall that shade creepers are gremlin-like things, kind of blackened and gooey, and they explode when they die. We're not doing a play-by-play of combat, but here are the highlights as I saw them. We got to meet a new kind of shade creeper who has like a kind of Blade 2 vampire dislodged jaw where it splits into two. It has an extra arm, it's slightly bigger, and it's slightly scarier. At one point, because Lordna is so dramatically missing her spells, they're not hitting her targets, Fresh Cut Grass throws a little bit of shade by summoning a spiritual weapon in the shade of a big bullseye like a target, and reminds his party to shoot at the target. Please hit your attacks. With the two Green Seekers, Ollie fights using two batons, dual wielding, which is kind of cool, and Gus has some magical scary spells, like Fireball. Imogen also has a great moment where she casts a spell called Seething Storm, and this spell creates an area on the battlefield that is just crackling with clouds and lightning and Of course, conspiracy theorists, it wasn't a red storm, but imagine if there are events in a future that made that spell be flavored as the red storm from her dreams. That would be cool. After the fight, Fresh Cut Grass casts a spell which heals everybody. It's a really powerful spell. I wrote down Prayer of Healing, but I don't think that's right. I think it might have been like Aura of Vitality. It lets him heal 2d6 to individual targets, one at a time, 10 times. It is very powerful. But here is the drama. Chetney turns invisible and he scouts into the next chamber after this fight, and he hears this skittering in the darkness, more shade creepers out there. He gets closer to the chamber and he sees these scraps of clothing and bone in the corners, past victims clearly. Now he goes through these two pillars and sees a path descending deeper into the mines. He sees lots of shade creepers huddling around a humanoid figure in a cocoon on the wall, which Lady Emoth slumps out of, all gooey. She's communicating via clicks with these shade creepers, breathing from pulsing holes in her back like some kind of weird fish. So she smells Chetney even though he's invisible, and Chetney just books it. Chetney runs. He stealths back to the party and tells them what's up. They form a pretty good plan here where Chetney says, look, if they can detect me, they can smell me, then I could run past them all and kind of get them to clump together and follow me so that Gus could use the Fireball spell to just obliterate them. But when they execute this plan, when Chetney heads off at a sprint down the cavern trying to lure as many of these creatures behind him as he can, in the mass of creatures there that he sees, there's no Lady Emoth. She's moved deeper into the chamber. Chetney, although invisible, is still making enough sound to lure these shade creepers behind him as he's running through and around them towards the deeper chambers. He gets to a deeper chamber and he sees this large room with orange kind of glows on the outside. There's some light source in this place. And then there's this huge explosion behind him. Kaplam! Kabloomo! That's the sound of a fireball exploding, because Gus has obliterated the creatures following him. In this chamber, these two figures are working over individual workbenches hunched over them, working on something mysterious clearly. But in the center of the room is Lady Emoth, looking up at something on the wall. It's this massive 60-foot slug, black, pulsing flesh. It's just wrapped around the roof and the wall. Ooh, it's huge. But my friend, it gets worse, because at the top of this slug, at the face end, there's this figure that kind of emerges out of that area. And it's, imagine like a queen ant with the huge thorax and then the little body. And the figure that comes out has these 10-foot long arms, like a humanoid torso comes out with pitch black eyes, no nose, and a crisscross of jagged teeth in this massive mouth. This thing is terrifying. Lady Emoth says, "Mother, we have visitors." And that, children, is How I Met Your Mother. Hey, I was hoping you could help me out with something, because my cat left this strange puzzle, this weird word puzzle. What does this say? I don't understand. Can you work that out? Subscribby? That's not a word, Ranger. If you can work that out, that would be really great. Thank you. All these people down here, these are my patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. You're really cool and good at stuff. Hey, become a patron. Get a complimentary song.